Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is the last video of this playlist. Don't know whether that's a woohoo or not. And this one is going to be on endometriosis and adenomyosis. I have to really concentrate to say that. So when I had my hysterectomy, the surgeon found some endometriosis, which I didn't know I had, attached to my ovaries, and he removed it when he removed my uterus, fallopian tubes, etc, etc. I've heard quite a bit about endometriosis because there's a lot more talk about it now than there ever has been, because there's so many women who struggle with this and go through a hell of a lot of pain and end up in and out of hospital and stuff, and nothing seems to end up getting done, no treatment. People, they're not believed until it gets like to a certain stage, and it's all crazy. But I don't feel like any of that sort of relates to me because I didn't know I had it. So when I went to the consultant for the checkup, she was like, it was a different person who did the surgery, and she was like, oh, it doesn't say about the endometriosis on like whatever it was she had on the screen. She says, did you used to have painful periods? And I was like, well, yeah, since like, I think the only painful period I didn't have was like my first ever one. So since I'm like 11, I've always had painful periods. I've been sick a couple of times with them, but it always lasted like a couple of days and then that was it. I have to take painkillers and stuff for them, obviously, otherwise like I couldn't do anything. But anyway, I didn't really think about that as not being normal because my mum was the same when she was growing up, and I've always known quite a few people, you know, that I've worked with and that who've also had painful periods. So it didn't seem to me very uncommon or anything to like worry about. And anyway, she seemed to think that that meant that I did have endometriosis. So we were talking about HRT and stuff and all that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm going to tell you what it is. I've written it down because I don't want to get it wrong, because I think there's so much information out there that's not correct and confusing. So that's why I'm doing this video, because again, it's about raising awareness and things, and I just want to get it out there and how it is, basically. So it says endometriosis is a long-term condition where tissue similar to the lining of the womb grows in other places, such as the ovaries, fallopian tubes and pelvis, but has been found pretty much everywhere. I've seen gynecologists on social media say it's been found in the leg and all sorts of different places. So it doesn't just stick to, it might start there, but it doesn't just stick to that area of your body. The trapped tissue bleeds during menstrual cycle, causing inflammation, pain and scar tissue. So for me, obviously, I did have menstrual pain, causing inflammation to get bloated, and pain obviously I had. I mean, I don't know about scar tissue, but obviously I can't see me insides. But apparently it affects roughly 1 in 10 women. So it's not uncommon. And I gathered it wasn't uncommon when you see it on social media, how many people are raising awareness and how many people are saying that they've got it. There's been documentaries and all sorts about it now. There's so much more information and knowledge about it. But I have a feeling, say 1 in 10 women, but that 1 in 10 women that's been diagnosed? Because there's a lot of people out there who I don't think have been diagnosed and struggling to be taken seriously. So I don't know. So it says symptoms. It says severe period pain, which I don't know whether my period pain was severe or not, but I did have period pain. As I said, I was sick a couple of times, but considering how many periods I had, a couple of times doesn't seem like a lot to me. Chronic pelvic pain. I did have pelvic pain. I used to get it a lot on my period and at the bottom of my back, and it got worse this last year or so while I was struggling with my bleeding a whole lot more. Like, it was getting worse. I was having more pelvic pain. So it's heavy bleeding, which obviously I did have, and potential fertility issues. I do have a fertility playlist on here, so you can see about how I've had problems and stuff with fertility in the past, or just altogether really, because I don't have kids anyway. And also there is no cure apparently for endometriosis. So I know it is quite hard for it to show up on scans, which I think is one of the reasons why it doesn't get diagnosed properly. But from what I gather is a lot of it is sort of misogyny within the medical profession, that they just sort of dismiss women. And I have to say, one of the female doctors I went to with the bleeding dismissed it as all really as being perimenopause, which, okay, fine, it could have been to do with perimenopause, but I was still bleeding all the time. That wasn't normal. What was I supposed to do? Just deal with that for the next 10 years of my life? Because generally you go through the menopause about 50, 51. So that's not a way to live, but it was like it didn't really matter. And that was a female doctor. So I don't think he necessarily, believed. And as it happens, I ended up with a hysterectomy. So good one. Anyway, so the next one moving on to is adenomyosis. So I've never ever heard of this. And weirdly, now I've seen a few things about it, because Google listens. So this is a benign condition where the tissue that normally lines the inside of the uterus grows into the muscular wall of the uterus. Sounds painful. This misplaced tissue continues to thicken, break down and bleed with each menstrual cycle, often causing the uterus to enlarge. So when I got a letter through after my hysterectomy, as well as the endometriosis, they said that I had a significantly enlarged uterus that could be a sign of endometriosis. So when I went to the consultant was like, oh, it doesn't say anything about that on here. What was she reading? Like, everything they'd given me letters from the hospital that they were talked about suddenly didn't appear on this. So I don't know what the heck was going on with that. But anyway, so that's what I was told in a letter. So the symptoms of this are heavy or prolonged menstrual bleeding. Out of all the things that I've done, and you've seen the previous videos, fibroids, polyps, all that, and endometriosis, this is the only one that mentions prolonged bleeding. So I was bleeding all the time, every day. There wasn't, people be, when was your last period? And I was like, I don't know, because I've just been continuously bleeding. Like, I don't know when my periods are. I didn't get any, before your period symptoms that you would normally do at any point within the bleeding. It was just constant bleeding. And it also is the only one that mentions with blood clots. I had some of my blood clots were absolutely massive. We're talking about, I said, they're really big. Like, I could feel them when I was going to the toilet. And that's basically how I ended up needing so many units of blood. It's because I was losing so much blood, and a lot of them were clots. It would come out in almost like water, and then there'll be, I remember once the doctor was like, do you have any clots? And I said, yeah, about 5. And he was like, oh, because I'd literally just gone to the toilet and 5 had just come out. They weren't all that big or anything, but I could feel all of them. So they weren't tiny, because obviously sometimes you can get little clots. After I had all the fertility stuff and had the IVF, I was getting clots from then, but they were teeny tiny ones. And I'd never had them before, but they were so small, you couldn't feel them or anything. And yeah, I didn't worry about that. But yeah, these were pretty huge. So I definitely got that. Also says severe menstrual cramps, which apparently my cramps were pretty bad. I shouldn't have had them at all, apparently. That may worsen over time. I don't think they worsened over time. I know with my mum, she said that hers got so much better after she had children. But obviously I haven't done that. So mine, I don't think got worse. But I did have some random pain sometimes, like a really sharp pain that didn't feel like my normal menstrual cramps and stuff. Earlier this year, I was one where I was literally doubled over in the bed. It was really sharp pain. It was horrible. But that didn't feel like menstrual cramps, my usual ones. And then it says chronic pelvic pain. Again, this said in endometriosis, I had pelvic pain in the bottom of my back. That did worsen as all this started happening in, over the last year and stuff. That did get worse. And I still had the pain in the bottom of my back. And a feeling of heaviness and bloating in the abdomen. And I definitely got this. I always got bloated on my period quite badly. I'd be like, I'm fat, this is all this. And then after my period, I'd be like, I'm not fat, because the bloating would have gone. And I was very bloated through most of this year when everything was going on. And full is exactly how I describe the feeling. It always felt like a pressure, it felt almost like the blood was all in there, wasn't going anywhere. It was so weird, but it was obviously going somewhere. And it did feel full, is how I described it to John and to the consultants and nurses or whatever. That's how I described it. So there is various things that you can do to manage it, including hormone treatment. That's the same with endometriosis as well. There is no cure, as I said, for endometriosis, but for adenomyosis, there is a cure, which is hysterectomy. Woo! So basically that's gone and it's not coming back. But the endometriosis I'm more worried about, because they found it obviously on my ovaries, and that might be all I've got inside, but it might not be all I've got. It could be somewhere else as well, and I won't know unless I have more pain and things. At the moment, I don't think I am. I mean, for all I know, that is everything, and I've got my fingers crossed that that was all there was in there. Because I don't really want things fused to get other organs fused together or anything. But if they've left something in there, obviously that's basically part of my uterus that can then multiply. Because I've read a lot about endometriosis, even though it's not cancer, it acts a lot like cancer, as in it can appear in any organ and spread and all this kind of thing, and cause a lot of damage. So obviously I don't want any of that to happen in my insides. But when I spoke to my consultant about this, when I went for the checkup, this woman, she was just like, well, you know, if you have more symptoms, you come to the doctor. And I'm like, so basically you're not going to do anything like an MRI scan to check if I've got any more, because MRI scan is one of the things they can do to check apparently, or anything like that. You're just going to hope for the best. But she's gone with a HRT saying I need progesterone as well as estrogen, which normally if you've had a hysterectomy, you'd only have estrogen for your HRT. But apparently that can make, on its own, can make endometriosis worse. Whereas if you have it with progesterone, it can help it or whatever and stop it from increasing. But yeah, but then she also said that, you know, I don't necessarily need to have it now, the HRT. So I'm like, right. I found that a bit confusing because I was like, symptoms wise, I don't feel like I need HRT. But if you're telling me that it's going to grow more, and I found that all confusing because normally I do estrogen, produce estrogen and progesterone, right? So, and it grows with having estrogen and progesterone naturally. I don't know. It's all confusing for me. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I have no idea. But anyway, this, as I said at the beginning, is the last video of this playlist. At some point, I'm going to do a menopause, or perimenopause, should I say, playlist, because I think it's really useful to know more about it. I've got a holiday vlog going to be coming up at some point because we are going on holiday. Woo-hoo. And that's an ongoing playlist, so that'll appear in there. So yeah, I've got a few things planned, and I do like the doing sort of series of something. I do like that rather than mix and matching bits and bobs everywhere because it gets a bit confusing. So I've got a couple of ideas for other playlists, so stay tuned, and thank you so much for watching this playlist. I really appreciate everyone who has. I mean, the one with the hysterectomy was just like crazy amounts of people watching it, and I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you've all found it interesting, and hopefully some of you have also found it useful for yourselves, or I don't know, supportive. You know, if you're going through something similar or the same, feels like you're on your own, you can see that someone else has gone through it and has gone through those kind of feelings and that as well. So yeah, I hope so. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you when I start the next series. Bye.